I'm pregnant with John's baby. So Karen, you should divorce John. It's sad for a child to grow up without a father, don't you think? Lisa said, tears in her eyes, as she gently touched her flat stomach. Behind her, Lisa's parents stared angrily at me. Lisa, John's childhood friend and ex-girlfriend, had shocked me many times before, but this time I was truly disappointed. After all, John was my husband. My name is Karen. I had a happy marriage with John. The reason I say had is because John is no longer here. One morning, he left for work with a smile, saying, "See you later," but he never came back. He passed away suddenly from an illness. John and I had just begun to enjoy a peaceful life together, but before that, we had problems with his mother and Lisa, his ex-girlfriend. Since John passed, I haven't heard much from my mother-in-law, but she was a selfish woman who always wanted to control John's life. Lisa was almost like a fiancée chosen by John's parents. When they were younger, both their parents told them they were meant to be a couple. So until middle school, they believed they were in love. But when John became a teenager, he realized it was silly to think like that. Lisa still liked John, but he liked someone else. So he talked to Lisa and told her their relationship didn't make sense. They broke up, but Lisa didn't give up on him. John was handsome and smart. Though not great at sports, this only made him more charming to others, so he had many girlfriends after breaking up with Lisa. Whenever Lisa found out John had a new girlfriend, she would show up on their dates and start talking about her memories with him. She would mention how they had their first kiss in kindergarten, or how they believed they were engaged because their parents said so. Naturally, no girlfriend liked hearing these stories. Because of Lisa's interference, John often got dumped. Even when I started dating John as an adult, Lisa did the same to me. It was annoying, but I didn't want to break up with John because of her. John really cared about me, and I cared about him too. Our relationship was based on our love for each other, so I thought Lisa didn't matter. When John apologized for her behavior, looking guilty, I told him not to worry. I suggested we get ice cream instead since I was hungry. He said he was so relieved in that moment, and it was when he realized he wanted to marry me. When we decided to get married, John's mother teamed up with Lisa to try and stop us. Lisa's family was wealthy, and John's mother wanted him to marry Lisa so she could benefit from it. Since Lisa still wanted to marry John, they shared the same goal. I was harassed many times when I visited John's parents' house. Once, my mother-in-law invited Lisa over for tea. Even though we had told them in advance that I would be visiting, John's father tried to stop her, but he couldn't stand up to his strong-willed wife. Whenever he spoke up, she would snap at him, saying things like, "You're so annoying. Lisa is like a daughter to us. It's fine." He would just back down. Lisa knew all of John's past girlfriends and loved to make fun of me, saying I was the least attractive. She joked that John didn't choose his wife for her looks, but because of her personality, making snide remarks like, "I can't believe Karen is such a wonderful person." My mother-in-law found this hilarious. John was furious at them both. He yelled, "Lisa, don't ever get involved with Karen again," and took me away from his family's house. He kept apologizing to me and didn't invite his mother or Lisa to our wedding. This, of course, didn't sit well with them. To get back at us, my mother-in-law and Lisa came to our new home. When John wasn't there, John had told me not to deal with them. So when I saw them on the security camera, I asked them to leave, but they didn't give up. They kept ringing the doorbell and causing a scene. So I eventually opened the door, because I didn't want to create any bad rumors in the neighborhood. When they came inside, they started looking around and criticizing the way we had decorated our home. The soft lighting John had carefully picked out was something Lisa called tacky, but when I mentioned that John chose it, she quickly changed her opinion, saying, "Oh, that's so like John. I think it's a nice design," making her fake approval obvious. Even though they showed up uninvited, I served them snacks and tea because they complained about being hungry, but my mother-in-law nagged me for not serving homemade food, and Lisa complained that the tea was too bitter. After they spent their time criticizing everything, my mother-in-law and Lisa left before John came home. Exhausted, I fell asleep on the sofa. When I woke up, John had gently covered me with a blanket. I told him everything that happened, and John was furious. He called his family and Lisa to confront them, but they didn't seem to care. Lisa, in fact, was excited just to hear from John after so long. I realized that no matter what we said, it wouldn't change anything with these people. John and I decided that if my mother-in-law and Lisa showed up again, we wouldn't open the door. If they caused trouble outside, we'd call the police, and if they still didn't leave, we'd ask the police for help. It was difficult when they actually did come back and we had to call the police, but after being scolded by the officers, my mother-in-law and Lisa finally stopped coming to our house. It was tough, but we thought we could finally live in peace. However, soon after that, John suddenly passed away. At the funeral, I was in shock, crying and clinging to his coffin. My mother-in-law even blamed me, saying I had stressed John so much that it caused his early death. If my parents hadn't stood up for me, I don't know how I would have gotten through it. I thought Lisa would show up at John's funeral, but she didn't. Even now, I get chills thinking about what might have happened if she and her parents had accused me together. 3 years had passed since John's death, and I was still living in the house we had shared. It was hard to leave a place filled with memories of him. One quiet day, the doorbell rang. When I checked the monitor, I saw Lisa standing there with a couple who looked like her parents. Lisa was smiling, but her parents had serious, stern faces. Out of curiosity, and since John's death anniversary was coming up, I didn't think much of it and decided to let them in. That turned out to be a mistake. "Long time no see, Karen," Lisa said. "I'm pregnant with John's child, so you have to divorce him. It's not right for a child to grow up without a father, don't you think?" Lisa spoke, her big eyes filling with tears, gently touching her belly, which wasn't even showing yet. I had been shocked by Lisa many times before, but this time I was truly stunned. After all, John had already passed away. As I struggled to make sense of her words, her parents stepped forward, raising their voices. "Even though John was married, he got our Lisa pregnant. He has to take responsibility. You're not going to suggest that Lisa should raise the child alone, are you? That's ridiculous," they demanded. As they caused a scene at my front door, a chill ran down my spine. Even after John's death, Lisa was still trying to cause trouble for him. John had always been kind, but Lisa had stressed him out many times. I couldn't forgive her for that. Trying to stay calm, I invited them inside, saying, "It's not good to stand here like this." I led them to the family room, where our family portraits were displayed. When Lisa's parents saw the pictures of John, they gasped in shock. Lisa peeked into the room too, her eyes wide, her voice catching in her throat. Of course, she was surprised to see John's portrait on display. While they were still processing what they saw, I calmly set up a table, prepared tea for everyone, and sat down across from them, ready to face whatever was coming. "So Lisa, you say you're pregnant with John's child. John passed away 3 years ago. I'd love to know how you managed that," I said, pretending not to notice that Lisa and her parents had turned pale. Lisa's eyes filled with tears, and in a shaky voice, she said, "That can be true," but before she could continue, her parents jumped in. "We're so sorry." Lisa's father suddenly knelt down on the floor, followed by her mother. He grabbed Lisa's arm and made her kneel too. "I'm sorry. We didn't know that John had passed away," he said, as Lisa broke into sobs. Her father, now angry, grabbed her by the collar and shouted, "Who's the father of your baby?" That's when Lisa began to reveal the truth. The reason she had suddenly stopped visiting us wasn't because she had given up on John, it was because she had been transferred for work. Apparently, Lisa's parents had lost contact with John's family, so they had no idea that John had died. As for Lisa's pregnancy, it wasn't clear who the father was. It could have been her married boss or one of the men she had met at bars. Her life had been so chaotic that it was impossible to tell. Even though she had feelings for John, Lisa was trying to tear us apart by claiming the baby was his, hoping he wouldn't abandon her now that she was going to be a single mother. When Lisa finally confessed, her mother started crying and her father shouted, "How shameful." I calmly asked Lisa, How many months pregnant are you? Ah, 3 months, she stammered. The baby is already kicking. You usually don't feel the baby move until about 4 months, I pointed out. Are you sure there's really a baby in there? Given Lisa's past behavior, I had my doubts as I looked at her coldly. She trembled and admitted, there's no baby. I love John. I really do. Lisa began to babble nonsense and her mother smacked her on the back. Her father, now in tears again, bowed deeply and said, we'll come back another day to apologize. Then they all left. As they were leaving, I said, no need for more apologies. Please don't come here again. After seeing them off, I lit a candle at the home altar and said a prayer. I spoke to John, saying, thank you for giving me strength. I'm not someone who usually stands up for myself or argues, but that day I felt calm and handled the situation just like John used to. It was as if John was there, helping me. For the first time in a long while, I cried for John. The house felt so lonely without him. A few days later, despite my request, Lisa's parents came back. I didn't want them inside the house, so I agreed to meet them at a nearby restaurant. When I arrived, they were already waiting, looking pale. We deeply apologize for what happened the other day. We're truly ashamed of our daughter, Lisa's father began. He explained that when Lisa found out about John's death, she cried and became delusional, thinking I might have been responsible for it. She wanted to confront me, but her parents took her to a hospital instead. Lisa was diagnosed with a severe mental illness, a condition that causes her to act recklessly to get what she wants. She'll be receiving counseling from now on. Lisa quit her job, thinking she would marry John, but now she has to face the reality of her situation and work on herself. Her life will be difficult, but she's finally getting the help she needs. While Lisa was receiving counseling, her parents were expected to cover the costs of her treatment, even though they came from a wealthy family. Lisa's parents seemed quite old and expressed how difficult it was to leave their daughter behind. This is our apology for the other day, they said, handing me an envelope full of cash. I didn't even bother to check the amount because I didn't need their money. I immediately turned it down. I don't want this money, I said. All I want is to never have to deal with you or Lisa again. Why don't you use it to move far away so we never cross paths? I added with a hint of sarcasm. Lisa's parents quietly replied, we will. After that, it seems they really did move. They sent me a letter telling me they had moved and included more money, which I rejected again. Judging by their new address, they had moved far away. Now, Lisa was unlikely to ever be part of my life again. Talking to the photograph of my late husband John, with his favorite cake placed beside it on the altar, I said, you know, our married life had so many interruptions, but despite that, I cherished every moment, and my time with John was happy. Thank you, I said on the anniversary of John's death. From now on, I plan to live my life alone without John, experiencing all the joys he didn't get to. And when I eventually join him in heaven, I'll have plenty of stories to share.